welcome to my kitchen. My name's Christine and I'm normally at the Little Green Shed allotment. This looks nothing like the Little Green Shed allotment. I have been to the allotment a few times this week and the main thing has been harvesting, and it's all about tomatoes at the moment. So I decided there was no way that our small family could possibly eat this quantity of tomatoes. So I have been doing some canning and I thought it would be nice to share that with you. So it's about 8 o'clock Thursday evening and I've harvested quite a few tomatoes today and thought it would be a good idea to make some jars of pasta sauce. So first of all, giving the tomatoes a good wash. There's a couple of options you can do here. You can cook the tomatoes beforehand and run them through like a sieve to get rid of all of the skin and the pips, or we don't mind having a little bit more skin, so I tend to just chop them raw and then I'm going to blend them. I've also picked a couple of peppers and I'm going to add some onions that I also harvested this morning. So these are what they call a paste tomato. So they're really good for sauces, and this variety is a blight-free one called Nagina, which I've had growing outside at the allotment, and it's doing really well. They've got like a plum sort of shape there. So yep, just cutting them into quarters. If you don't like the stalk piece, then you can take that out. To be honest, I think once it's blended, we don't mind the texture, so we're quite happy with that. So I'm filling up my blender thing here. I'm sure it's not called a blender thing. Let's see if I can get that into shot. Up to the maximum line. I'm going to have to do this in batches. A pretty full pot there full of the tomatoes. They're paste tomatoes because they've got a lot more fibre to them, less water than say like a beef steak, but you can throw in a mixture, whatever you've got really, and you can make a really nice sauce. I'm just putting the last of the tomatoes in. I've kept a few back so that I can blend it with the garlic, the peppers and the onion. Now, when it comes to quantities, I'm going to be terrible about this because I just pretty much go with what I have. And so each batch may taste a bit different, but we're not ultra fussy. So I've put some garlic in. I'm thinking I'd like to put a little bit more. I am going to put both peppers in and this onion as well. I'm thrilled because all of this has come from the allotment. So right up until now, it's all been homegrown. Obviously, I will be adding some further ingredients, which I haven't taken from the allotment. It's now into 2 saucepans, and I appreciate this colour-wise does not look the most appetizing of pasta sauces. So what I do add to this is some tomato puree. You don't have to, it just means that you're going to have to be reducing it a lot more, but I will add some tomato puree. And then I just raid my cupboard to see what I've got. I've got some dried parsley, some mixed herbs. I've even got a little bit of cayenne, just for tiny bit of flavour. I might stick that in, and I do a dash of olive oil. But first of all, I want to get this cooking. I want to bring it up to a boil and then gently simmer. I need it to reduce down. But yeah, once we get the puree in, it begins to look a much nicer colour. And a further ingredient that you may want to add, I definitely need to add, is some sugar. Keep taste testing it. If it tastes too acidic, add some sugar. Start with like a tablespoon, and yeah, just keep tasting. I mean, everybody likes things differently. Colour wise, we're looking a lot more like pasta sauce now. I'm about to add my seasoning of just salt and pepper. Now the plan here is then to let this simmer down. It's a little bit frothy, and that's because I've put it through the blender. If you was to cook the tomatoes first and then mill them or sieve them, you wouldn't have this sort of extra froth. I didn't blend too heavily, so my mixture's already quite thick, but I will be putting the contents into jars and then hot water bathing them. You can, I believe, heat pack, that is put hot ingredients into hot jars and then let them seal, and then they will preserve. But just as a extra precautionary method, I'm happier putting this into hot jars and then doing the water bathing method, which I will share with you. We've reached the stage where I'm going to start putting the sauce into jars. A couple of tips: when you taste your sauce, if it's too acidic, then add more sugar. You can add honey. You can also add a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. So all natural things that will counteract the acidity. If you realise you've gone too far the other way and your sauce is too sweet, then you can add some lemon juice. So just some tips. Now I will be putting into jars. These are the Kilner jars. Over on the hob now, I've got a very large saucepan, and inside I've just put a couple of trivets. I've got the water is heating up here because it's going to be hot sauce, so it needs to go into hot water. 7 jars. That was a lot of luck, not judgment, measuring out 7 jars. Then you need to just wipe around the edges of your jars, because you're going to be putting on your seals and your rings. Make sure that when you put your rings on, you don't tighten them too tight, just finger tight. Now I know this is going to beg the question of sterilizing the jars, but the way I view it is the jars are clean, there's cooked pasta sauce going into them, the jars are then going into boiling water, so that's going to sterilize them there. So it's having sort of like 2 recooks, and then of course when you go to use the pasta sauce again, you're going to be cooking it for sort of a 3rd time. They're going to boil away in there for 10 minutes. Now again, another thing is I haven't submerged the jars completely. It's a debatable thing. Some people prefer to submerge the jars. I think sometimes the water can seep in. It's always worked out fine so far for me, but I appreciate people have different methods. The other thing is, definitely if you can get some jar lifters, they make life a lot easier. I'm doing it in 2 batches. I've only got 4 jars in there at the moment. That one does need to be a bit more upright. I haven't got the best stand at the bottom. I've got one coming. This saucepan has actually got quite a thick base, so it's debatable whether I need a base for the jars to stand on. You can get fancy racks and things. This is just a general saucepan, it's not actually a canning saucepan, so I'm improvising. And I should mention, you put the lid on. These have had 10 minutes. I've just turned off the heat. I'm going to lift the jar out and put on the tray to cool. Now, what you ideally want to hear is a pop sound, which is the lid. It's going to be sealing. It's going to create that vacuum and then be sealed as the jar cools. You'll see that there's some cloudiness on the glass and on the lid, and that's because this is a very hard water area. When the jar has cooled, you can just wipe the outside of the jar with some white vinegar or lemon juice. Now, if any of the jars haven't sealed, pop them in the fridge, use up the contents as soon as you can. The ones that have sealed should last, if stored sort of somewhere cool and dark. You know, you could still be eating it next year. It's the following morning and I've come down and checked all the jars and the seals are secure. You can tell by just sort of picking them up by the seal edge, and also that they're firm. There's no air popping or anything there. I take off the screw top lids because they can be reused. You just store your jars like this. I'll get a Sharpie and write on the top the date and the contents. I've also wiped the jars over with some lemon juice to get rid of the hard water residue, but I'm pleased. I've got 7 jars there out of a basket. The consistency is fairly sort of runny there, but of course once you open it and cook it for your meal, you can obviously cook that down a little bit further if you need it to be thicker. So I hope that's been useful. There's tons and tons of canning videos on YouTube. There's not many UK ones though, I've discovered. Not that I'm an expert by any means, but this method seems to be working for us. It wouldn't be a video of mine unless I shared some footage of the friendly fox. So please make sure you stick around for that at the end. As always, big thanks for watching and make sure you take care now.